This is Fam Electric Ghost doing live on the air with Bryan Thompson for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing on a Sunday afternoon?
I am doing fantastic. Couldn't be better. Thank you.
Want to thank you for being here. We are a live podcast, so we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick at the moment. And what we're going to talk about today is your estate plan is not as private as you think. That's kind of the focus of this episode. And before we get to the heart of your story, I always ask people a couple things. Um, in terms of like what is your what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Well, what motivates me is the fact that as a trust and estates attorney, most of black people now and people in general, but a lot of African Americans, we have a lot of property now. And we're at this stage where our parents or grandparents have achieved property, and we're really looking for ways to build generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that generational wealth is going to be built and continued through estate planning. And what really motivates me is just that drive to make sure that we can be on that level. Because right now, as a community, we have the ability to get past the past, if you will. So we know things like Tulsa and Black Wall Street and all the things that have happened to us as a community, but now it's time for us to take those things, learn from them, but then move forward because we can achieve generational wealth. And that's what motivates me professionally. Now, personally, what motivates me is just my wife and daughter. I know I have
Mm-hmm.
mouths to feed and I want them to be proud of me and everything like that. But that's what professionally motivates me is just promoting that generational wealth.
I think that's really important, and for to let people know, I put the QR code up. If people know how that works, is it's the same thing as the URL that's out there. So if people scan that, they can immediately go to your URL, and so they can like follow along if they want to get into the details of your website. But we put that up because it's an easier way for people to connect to you.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of times like artists like or creative people, even people like they're entrepreneurs, they don't know how to do like the bookkeeping, the accounting, the actuarial stuff, and the legal stuff, and they get maybe so caught up in the actual idea that they're working on or their vision, and they lose sight of things like estate planning. They lose sight of like how important it is. Oh, I'll wait. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do it the next day. Oh, I got some time to do it. But a lot of times like you never do it.
Right.
So like is that what you run into a lot of people that you think they should have they would have had a plan but they don't have it.
Yeah, and when it comes to creatives, I mean, artists, authors, YouTubers, people that are creatives, estate planning is actually very important to them, and typically they wouldn't realize it until it's too late. For example, I know a person who was working on a few scripts and has actually had screenplays published. And he got into a car accident where he was a pedestrian, actually just walking on the sidewalk, and someone ended up hitting him. And basically, he's in the hospital currently with a coma and everything, and nobody knows how to access any of
Oh, it's
his
tough.
information, any of his scripts, any of his emails. So right now, he's at a major disadvantage because some of the producers that he may be working with, and again, I was hired by his family, but some of the producers that he may be working with think he just went MIA. I mean, they probably literally think this guy ghosted him,
Yeah.
and that's a problem. So, uh, for creatives and people like that, it's very important that you have some type of documents in place to ensure that there's some type of continuity should you be incapacitated, right? Should you be stuck somewhere and you cannot communicate or incapacitated a lot of times. When it comes to death, that's a little different because with creatives, when it comes to death, what you're going to be wanting to be concerned about are maybe your royalties and what are going on there,
Yeah.
or if someone can publish or use your screenplays or whatever creativity you're working on, whatever project, how that's going to be handled after death. Because I know my wife is actually a creative, a film director, and I know that there's probably a lot of things that she's working on that she would love someone else to pick up and run with if she actually died, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
You
it's
got
very
get
important. And I
fleshed
know
out.
it's a boring topic. It's a
Yeah,
boring
nobody.
topic,
Yeah, nobody ever
but
wants to
it's
handle it because it's a big problem. Because like Prince left without an estate plan. You know,
right.
and that's a guy that's like high level super achiever, like at the top of his game, and he just didn't like contracts. He purposely said it tons of times. He didn't like it. He didn't like doing legal work. But then it's like if he had a vision for how your legacy should be handled, like that, if you're so like so a lot of times people are so controlling of their image. And now in his death, like his image is not being controlled probably the way he wanted it to be controlled because he didn't write it down.
Right. 100%. And I really like the last part you said, how he wanted it to be controlled. Because the fact of the matter is, we have plans in place. The government, wherever you live, whatever jurisdiction you live, whatever country you're in, we have since probably the beginning of time, we've had some mechanism for transferring your property when you pass away. Right? I mean, even in the Stone Age, somebody got your
Somebody
tools
got your
and
stuff.
something
Yeah.
like that. So there was some type of mechanism. And if you want to participate in that and actually you make some of the decisions, most of the countries and jurisdictions that we're in, you're allowed to make those decisions. There's some way that you can do it. Now, for instance, for us in the United States, you can have trust and wills and all types of third party contracts to determine what happens if. But if you don't plan for it, then you're just waiting on those default rules that the government has set up for you, which in reality aren't that bad,
Hmm.
but there just may not be what you want. And
Yeah.
for a creative, that
That's a
may
big
be
problem.
very important.
Yeah. Because a lot of times the creative, like, let's say, like, if you're an artist, whether you're a filmmaker, painter, whatever, if you've got a vision for your work, you got stuff that you did not really want published. And then you got stuff that you did, right? And you got might have a thing. Well, I don't want my stuff used in commercials, right? I don't want my stuff to be like, I don't want it on this network. I don't want it in this venue. I have very specific wants, and I know what I want, where I want this stuff to be, and I know the type of people I want to be working on this kind of thing. So if you are very, very, laser focused on how you wanted that stuff to be in your life, I would think that you could actually set that aside and say, well, I don't want that reveal. Well, I don't. This is not was never ready. It's not ready. It's not going out.
Right, right. And what I like about what you said about that is the fact that that's why when you're signing contracts and when you're entering into these agreements, that you think about your estate planning at some point because that's going to factor in. Because when you're signing these agreements with production companies or you have some LLC to handle this aspect of your work or your project, well, guess what? All that project is going to be held by the terms of that LLC or by the terms of that production agreement that you have. So if you have some type of estate plan, that would at least give you the opportunity to make sure that it's cohesive with the plan. It's like when we read contracts, oftentimes, people will look at them because I work with a lot of creatives because my wife is in the film
Mm.
industry and they'll sometimes send me a contract, be like, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Okay, there's some room to negotiate. There's some things to talk about. But if you don't have any central plan, like, hey, you know what? If I were to die or if I were to be incapacitated, I would want this or that." And that's where it's important to get the lawyers involved because now I can actually make some revisions to the contract or to the agreement that fit you.
Yeah, because you might have like a plan was like I said, you don't want your material used in commercials. They
Right.
like that's a thing. Like Prince was very adamant he didn't want his stuff being used by like soda companies. He didn't
Hmm.
want it. He didn't want to do that. Now, I
Hmm.
think people realize that, and even though he's not here, somebody kind of made a decision, and you haven't heard his stuff being used that way because
Hmm.
somebody figured it out. But like that needs to be explicitly stated if you don't want that, right?
Right. And it gets kind of complex because we have to remember that an estate plan and most of the documents that you would execute as a part of an estate plan, and that could be life insurance, that could be, you know, wills, trust, and everything, but the type of documents that we're using to create an estate plan is only going to be for property and interest that you as a person own. So often, artists may have different collectives and different agreements to whereas their work is not their own,
Yeah, if they don't own the
or
master. Yeah, like it's like
right,
if they want
or it
like a
may
musician, like you have to own your master if you really want to control like what happens to it in the sync licensing world. So
mhm,
like if your label owns the licensing, they can put it anywhere they want. But if you own the sync licensing and you own the master, you can say, "Hey, I don't want it used here." And some artists, they sign that away because they don't understand it. Again, they a lot of times companies will just give them an upfront money and they didn't read the contract, and that's like the big artist problem, like in music and some other types of art forms that people don't realize when they give you that cash what they put in the contract.
right. Often they don't because I think oftentimes we blindly trust and we figure that okay, people are good and they're going to do what they said they're going to do, and of course they wouldn't put anything in this contract that's going to hurt me or something like that. So,
Yeah, that's like the musicians have always found out that like if you sign something and you don't own the mechanical production rights and you don't own like the idea of like a lot of times they don't realize like you think you own like the copyright to your actual lyrics, right, and your composition, but you might not own the rights to actually distribute it,
mhm.
right, and send it to the distributors, or to license it for the radio, or license it for TV, or license it for toys, or whatever. So if you didn't check out what you actually control, and that's why a lot of artists have gone like independent so that they can totally control that to a certain degree. It's just always when you get to distribution, then you get into play, all kinds of issues.
Right, right, right. And that's the curse I think of the artist is when they first started, they don't know if it's going to blow up into something really big or not. So they often do kind of overlook a lot of those initial issues and then it ends up sometimes being bad for them. And that's why I just encourage them to think about every single project as this is going to be the thing that blows up.
Yeah, because the problem a lot of times is like if you're a starving artist, like a good example, like Hendrix used to sign every contract that ever came in front of him. They're like I'm a big fan of like so I've read a lot about him. And then like after he died, it was a nightmare because he had signed so many publishing contracts when he was not big. Like when he was like on the Chitlin circuit, he's playing with Little Richard and Isley Brothers. He would sign anything,
Mm,
and then all those companies came after he died, and he said, "No, we own it. We own it." But he had multiple companies he signed with,
yeah.
and nobody had really checked, and they were kind of conflicting.
Wow. Wow.
So it was a total like nightmare in
Yeah,
terms of like
yeah.
trying to figure out who owns what.
Right, and what's interesting about that is that nowadays, due to issues like that, you have a lot of companies and production companies, et cetera, who will make sure they're checking around to see if they own the rights or and there's different language in contracts now, but yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, because
And
the
on the
internet.
other side of that, on the other side of that, you had, I believe I'm not quite sure what artist it was, but, he had a situation where he had his production company was actually his medical healthcare power of attorney, and
Mhm.
when he was on his, deathbed, his family couldn't even visit him because the
They controlled it.
literally his agents had
To
his
go.
healthcare power of attorney, and that was included into some of his recording contracts.
Yeah, it's terrible because some of the contracts are so bad. Like if you look at like a lot of the early artists, like in the
Mhm.
early 20th century, like they were so terrible. I mean, like I heard like a Beatle contract one time was so bad they had to renegotiate by like the late 60s because they were getting like hardly anything
Oh,
on
wow.
their on their on their basically their rights to like put their name on like coffee cups and
Yeah.
lunch, but all those type of rights, they had like one of their first managers had like really gave them a really terrible deal, and they
Yeah.
were super big, and they didn't realize how bad the deal was until they
Right.
like they got to the 70s. Like, wait a minute, we're getting like 2 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you don't. I mean, I remember when I was back as a teenager, my cousin and I, we had a DJ business, and this was back when you had vinyl records, so
Hmm.
you really had the crates of music and everything. And we needed some money to kind of, we needed a cash infusion. So one of our friends' dads, he had a lot of money in my opinion. His house was like 4 stories, right? So he had a lot of money in our opinion. And I remember we went to him with we said, hey, we just need some money to do this. And he says, okay, well, how much interest you give me? Or what's your split gonna be? Right. And we said, 80/20. And he said, no. He said, never. That is horrible. That's 20% that you're giving me. And I'm only giving you this amount of money. He's like, maybe 5%.
But yeah,
Right. So it's like he helped us with that.
yeah, that's
And I
great.
never forgot that. I never forgot that because I would think I was just like, "Hey, just let us get the money at any cost." But he was said, "No, no, no. I'm not gonna do that to you
And the
guys."
thing is, sometimes like artists got the shift where they were getting 20 and the record's getting 80. Company was getting 80. There's a lot of
Right.
old
Oh,
deals
oh,
where,
wow.
yeah, there's a lot of old deals where people got like really ripped.
Oh,
It's terrible. But like I think one thing that's interesting because I was reading about like if you have like an unmarried partner, let's say if you're in common law partner, and then you have this kind of situation with your estate, like what kind of rights does your common law partner, or if you're a single, single sex, like if you're gay or in that kind of situation, what kind of rights do you have?
so that's gonna depend on the jurisdiction that you're in, but, out here in California, we call so there's a couple different things. So let's just go with just unmarried partner, right? Doesn't really matter if they're male, female, heterosexual, gay, whatever. We out here in California call that a Marvin relationship. And what
Mm,
a Marvin relationship is just a Supreme Court case here in California, which basically said that your partner will have some type of rights into the assets if certain things happen. But it's definitely not common law in
mm,
California, at least. There's no real common law marriage or anything like that. But there are some Marvin relationships. Um, when it comes to like LGBTQ or something like that,
yeah.
we do have registered domestic partnerships and things like that. But typically, your property is going to go to based upon bloodlines
Hmm.
unless you
It's gonna
write
go
something different.
family. So like it's gonna go right to your family relationships, that whole hierarchy,
100%.
unless you actually
100%.
have something that legally states otherwise.
Correct. So typically in California, but it's pretty common across the states at least, is if you have if you die with some type of property, it's either going to go to your spouse and some to your kids, or if you don't have a spouse, everything's going to your kids. If you don't have a spouse and you don't have kids, it usually goes up to your parents.
Parents
And
or
if your parents
grandparents
aren't
and stuff
alive, it
like
goes
that.
to siblings.
Siblings, like,
And
does it even
and
go to grandparents like that?
no, it would then just flow down to the siblings,
Oh, it
and
flows
then
that way, so it never goes
cause
that
yeah,
far.
right, right. But that's here in California. But in any event, especially for creatives. And this is why I was so happy to be on your podcast, because for creatives, oftentimes that is not something you want. You want it to go to somebody else that either you were helping or that was helping you, or somebody that's actually going to take your resources and do something with them.
Yeah, because you might like again, you might have that vision. Like, say you're working like in a collective. Let's say if you were a jazz guy, right? You think of these great jazz bands, like Miles Davis, and he's working with Coltrane. He's working with all these
Hmm.
guys. These guys all have the same mindset. You know, Davis might trust Herbie Hancock to know what to do, right?
Hmm.
Like you think about, they're gonna trust Coltrane to know what to do, right? Because they're in the same space. They might not
Right,
trust their cousin
right.
or their spouse because they might not know anything about it, right? So it's like that's where they might want to direct something because it's like they want a like-minded person to run this state.
Right. And they may want their family to benefit some from the financials, and
Yeah, they
that
might.
could be set up, but you
Mhm.
don't want to necessarily give your family the right to some of those masters or that creativity things that you have, because they may not be able to do it properly. They may not be in the industry and things like that. So it's really bad, but you can direct some of those resources and royalties to go to them.
Yeah, so you have to like you want to kind of like a life insurance contract. Your life insurance, you have it go to your dependents, right? Because like or your codependents, because that's kind of the organization. But when you have your estate, like let's say you have an LLC or you have a sole proprietorship or you actually were running a corporation. Within the corporation, that's going to survive on its own structure because that's got a board of directors. That's going to be more clear. If
Right.
you're in that, unless you're on the board of trustees, and maybe you were on the board of trustees, and maybe that relationship needs to have some kind of link. And I don't know, how does that work?
Oh yeah. So when it comes to your interest in some type of business, that's always going to be governed by the articles of incorporation or the operating agreement of that business that you have, that you're involved with.
Hmm. So it's going to
Yeah.
run by that. It's going to run by the corporate rules, whatever those rules are. Whether it's a big corporation, it's actually that's a legal entity in itself, and it's got its own structure.
Right. I mean, if it's a structure that you have created with some other people, like sometimes you'll see oftentimes some type of general partnership when it comes to creatives, or LLCs are actually very, very common when it comes to creatives. And those will have some type of operating agreement that talks about what happens to the disposition of shares or interest when this person either dies or becomes incapacitated or otherwise wants to leave the partnership.
Yeah, because you actually might have a lot of shares. Let's say, like, what if you were one of the co-founders of a company, or you one of these like Microsoft millionaires, and they had all the stock, and they actually didn't get rid of it. They actually just held it, right? So if they held it and they still have an interest and something happens to them, well, who gets that? Right.
Right. Well, it kind of depends, right? If it's a closely held company, then generally it's going to be the operating agreement or the articles of incorporation of that corporation. Like if it's some type of S corp, if it's an LLC, it's definitely going to be the operating agreement with that LLC. And if it's a regular like C corp, it depends on where your interests are, because if it's a C corp, you probably just have regular shares like common stock or
Hmm.
preferred stock, which could be sold. But when it comes to closely held corporations, the government does recognize that we don't want the entity to be able to be hijacked
Yeah, it could be
by
hyped
the
by somebody could just come in and say, "Well, I got a controlling interest because I got 51% of the
yeah,
shares," and now you got
yeah.
this guy that says, "Well, you know what? I want to shut it down, or I want to make this decision, and the decision's like counterintuitive to actually making a profit."
Exactly, exactly. So it's all been done before, and the government recognizes that. That's why they have some type of special status for those type of businesses. But but at the end of the day, it's really important just to check those agreements and those operating agreements to see what the disposition of your shares are and how you can transfer them. For instance, some LLCs have like a right of first refusal. You have to kind of offer it up to the group before and stuff like that.
stuff like that. So there's also this like kind of common kind of idea of like if you need a trust because you want to avoid probate. Is that like the general rule of thumb that people they really need to have that so they don't end up having things go right to probate?
Yes, that is a general truth that if you have a trust, the property in that trust does not go through the probate process. That is a general fact. However, what people quite don't understand is that what they think they're doing is they're saying, if I have a trust, I avoid court involvement.
But
And
that's
they're
not
using
exactly true.
not at all. And oftentimes the term probate is confused with court involvement.
mm,
So if you have a trust, yes, the property that you have funded in that trust, and all that means, a fancy title, all that means is you've literally taken the deed to your house, and now it says, instead of your name, John Doe, it's John Doe as trustee of the John Doe Trust. Okay.
mm-hmm.
That's titling something in the name of your trust. It could be done with your bank accounts, it could be done with brokerage accounts, whatever. Okay. All right. Now, property that's not funded in your trust still has to go through the probate process if it's not funded in your trust. So
mm,
if you leave the bank account out of your trust, that's going to operate outside of probate because we have to remember that the probate process is anything that you haven't already given away. The judge has to authorize somebody else to do it because you don't have any hands. So
mm-hmm.
you can no longer write a check to your heirs or anything like that. You can't physically give them the family Bible.
Yeah,
The judge has to authorize somebody to do that. So that's where we come through with probate. So you can, with a lot of planning, careful planning, and continuous planning, you can avoid probate. What you cannot avoid is court involvement because people are going to fight over your trust all day
yeah,
long.
yeah.
And
That's
it
the problem.
lands right in the probate court, but it's called a trust matter, not a probate matter.
So I guess the thing is, I guess people are thinking like what you were kind of pointing out is folks are thinking, oh, I'm gonna avoid all those problems, the quote problem, but like it's still gonna happen. Like I guess you can try to plan to the nth degree to minimize how many things are actually gonna be in dispute versus things that are not gonna be in dispute. But there's always gonna be something you probably forgot to do unless you're really good at the planning. So is that the like what's the level
The,
of that
the
type of
thing is,
confusion?
this is the thing in reality. The thing is that, yes, if you, like you said, if you're very careful in planning and it just becomes a hobby for you, and every month you're calling your estate planning attorney and saying, hey, I just want to update this and update that. And some people are like that. But the problem is that when somebody dies, it is just unfortunate. But there is a myriad of issues that come up at the same time. Some people are grieving and people grieve differently. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, there's a void now in the family because the matriarch has died or the patriarch has died. Now, all of a sudden, there's this vie for control. And remember, all of this is going on while we're all working. I mean, we all are working,
You'll have to,
and
yeah,
so and so is retired. So now they're over at mom's house doing this and that and not communicating with anybody and all of this stuff. So the problem becomes the family dynamics change significantly after the death of like a matriarch or patriarch. And you can't stop the infighting sometimes because sometimes as siblings, maybe the kids grew up together and they had a great relationship as siblings or maybe an
yeah,
okay relationship, but these adult relationships are way different.
yeah. They're more volatile. They're more complex, And you don't know until you actually have that situation. Like you could think everybody's gonna get along, but then after the matriarch or the patriarch actually passes away, then maybe people aren't getting along. People, like I
Yeah.
say, they're vying for whatever they think the leverage they want to get, and so it becomes a sticky situation no matter what. I mean, it's just a matter of like how much planning did that person do before
How
they passed.
much planning? How much planning they did, and then what did they actually plan for? Because one of the biggest mistakes I think that happens is that when people plan, they basically give everything to their children, and then if one of the children has died, that child's children, so the grandchildren,
Oh, they jump
take
in.
that parent's share.
Oh, and
Now that may
that's where it
sound
gets
okay.
complex.
Yeah, and that may sound okay, but here's the problem, is now all of a sudden you have a few grandkids, maybe one or two, getting a huge share, and everybody, all the other grandkids aren't.
Yeah,
So,
and
so,
they
so
get
that creates a lot of
friction.
problems.
That could, you can see that could create a lot of passion, a lot of friction, and then there's a lot of emotion. And, law is like pretty much, it's pretty clear, but emotions are not very clear. Like emotions are volatile, and if somebody gets more than what somebody else thinks they should get, then then that becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing that happens in the probate court a lot. So again, in California, okay, where I'm from in San Francisco, the probate court is a part of the Superior Court of California. Okay. So there's no the probate judge has the same jurisdiction as a criminal judge or any other judge. Okay.
Mm,
In that regard, but what happens is that realistically in the probate court, the probate judge is concerned with have the creditors been paid, have the
hmm
has the administration been done properly, have taxes been paid, and the beneficiaries been identified and paid. What they're not concerned with is criminal acts perpetrated by people during the process, right?
Oh,
So the fact that you simply went online, printed up a will, and forged grandma's signature,
they
the
don't care about
judge
that.
just says, yeah, I mean, it's just like once we prove that this was a fake, there's no real repercussions. The judge just says, well, if you want to pursue that, go file a crime report and go talk to
Oh,
the
that's a
district
totally
attorney. And
separate. So that's a separate. They don't get into the nitty gritty of that.
right, where and that's why I was saying they can, but they're just they don't deal with it. It's just as a general rule of
Yeah.
practice, they don't really deal with it. So my point of saying all that is you end up getting passions are different, like you just mentioned, people grieve differently, and then all the shenanigans that come out of the woodwork because nobody really gets in trouble and nobody, you make up some fraudulent trust, but all you say is, well, I found this. I didn't make this up. I just found it under the mattress.
Yeah. So people start doing they're not doing their better angel self. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. So the idea of a conservatorship versus the trust. What are what's the details to that? Because I don't think a lot of people understand the terms in this space in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah. So a conservatorship is a legal process that appoints a person to look after and take care of another person, whether it be their finances or just their person. But generally, a conservatorship is going to be where a judge appoints a person to control not only your physical life, but your financial life.
Mm.
Whereas a trust is something where you, as a person, are signing a contract with a successor trustee that is going to control your assets pursuant to the terms of that trust. So typically when you write a trust agreement, you're the trustee You're the grantor, which means the person who started the trust, established the trust, and then you're the trustee, the person that's managing the trust. So during your lifetime and during your periods of capacity, there's really nothing going on. That's why the IRS treats trust as just pass through entities. They disregard the trust for tax purposes because it's really just an alter ego of you.
Hmm.
But you've basically signed an agreement with the successor trustee that is going to distribute the trust or administer the trust pursuant to those trust terms. So typically with a conservatorship, you wouldn't really need a conservatorship so long as you have a robust trust. And I would highly recommend an attorney drafted trust. And that's only because trusts are very complex legal documents. And I know you can just kind of pull stuff online and
All
look
this
at it, but
AI
in
stuff
reality,
nowadays. Yeah, that's the concern. One thing I was going to ask because
yeah,
we have all these AI tools saying, "Oh, I can be your AI lawyer," right? But like I've found, like I'm an IT guy, and I know I have to trust and verify. I don't want AI writing my code because it may be able to help me write the code, but it's not going to write 99% of the code because the stuff it's going to do, it's going to be garbage or it's going to be slop. It's not going to be right. So I would think the same thing comes to like a legal document. If you let AI write it, it's going to be like slop. There's going to be errors. There's going to be things that don't make sense, and you might not know enough to know what where's the error.
well, you don't know what you don't know. And you also have to look at it from a standpoint, well, you don't have to do anything, but what I would suggest people do is look at it from the standpoint of how it's going to actually operate. So the thing is uh, a state attorney or trusted estate's attorney like me, I'm here when it operates. So I already know, oh, your bank is who? Oh yeah, no, this is not gonna work. They're gonna need this provision in here specifically stating X. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's gonna be a 6 month process with them and all of that. Or, oh, your family dynamics are like this. Okay. Well, how about we do this, this, and that? So an AI tool is not really going to help you. What it's going to do is it's just going to give you a document, and it's probably going to be a legal document, but a couple of problems with it. Number one, you're not really interested in it because you just did it real quick. So
It
there's really
was.
no investment. You didn't really go through the thought process of, okay, all these little micro decisions, or, oh, I never thought about that, or, oh, good point, stuff like that. You never went through any of that. So if you never read it, I mean, who else is gonna read it?
Yeah. Also, it could be it's like probably very generic and it's not personalized or individually uh, really appropriate for you. Because I would think what happens with a lawyer, or if any kind of custom human being interaction, if you have a human being involved in a process, they're going to ask questions. They're going to have the benefit of their, you know, experience. If they're sitting with you, there's the body language. They're reading you because it's a human situation. But if you have a machine, the machine can't read your body language. The machine doesn't actually also infer what something really means. It just looks for the literal meaning, right? It might
Right.
not ask the additional questions, and you get like just a very surface level thing going on. It's not customized. It's not actually maybe individually catered to you.
Right.
It
100%. I mean, like as a creative, right? If you have a trust or some type of power of attorney set up, okay, if I know that you are a musician or I know that you're an author, what I'm gonna do, let me tell you this real quick, is I'm gonna create some unique provisions for you, but let me just set it up real quick. A trust is typically 15 articles or chapters, whatever you want to call it, about various things. You know, the first article is usually the name of the trust, and we're establishing the trust for our future generations, etc. Right? And then article two is usually these are my family members, this and that. And it goes all the way down these articles. And then you get down to maybe article seven, and that may talk about the the grant that you're giving the truster, the successor trustee, and their duties and their powers that they have. But if I know that you you work with Simon and Schuster, or I know that you're working with this production company or that production company. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to that production company. Hey, how you doing? Working on a estate planning. I want to make sure it jives with you and this and that. So now all of a sudden I'm making it extremely unique to you, so that
Mm,
when we actually use this
it's gonna
and
work.
say, hey, this has been triggered, it's going to work because not only have we already worked with their lawyers, but we already have their language and this and that. And if you don't think that's important, then you just don't know what you're talking about. And that's okay. But I'm telling you, these things are vital when it comes to actually working.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like that's the problem. A lot of times, like even like in the AI world, it's like it seems it's a very quick thing. People like things so quick, but like if you do something too fast, you know what happens. It's just like when you assume, like
Yeah.
it doesn't work, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't deal like a lot of times things are not the happy path. Like in programming, we deal with this thing called the happy path, unhappy path, right? It's like the 80-20 rule or the 95-90-10 rule. And the problem is like that 10% thing, that takes a lot of work, right? The happy path, maybe that can handle it. But the 10%, 20% that's not typical path,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean.
that's the stuff that is super complex
Yeah.
and has a lot of really complicated code or rules.
Right.
And if you depend on somebody doing something super fast and say, well, I don't care about that. It's like, but the problem is like your 20% or 10% might account for a lot of your money or a lot of
Good
your
point.
flow and or the problems you get with your flow. And if you don't handle it, it'll wreck you.
Hmm. Hmm. Good point. Good point.
So I think that's why people still need people. So I know all the tech bros want to tell you don't need people because they want to just sell us bots and they want to sell us compute. But I'm not telling you right now, I'm in tech. And it's like some of this stuff is oversold. It's like they're selling a bill
Right.
of goods.
Right, 100%. And as an attorney, I've really tried to incorporate AI into my practice. But the thing is that I've kind of just thrown it out at this point because I tried to use it, but when I would use it, I would ask it questions that I thought it would definitely understand, and then it would spit out an incorrect answer. And I
Yeah.
remember a few times I would basically cross-examine and saying, hold on, but what about X, Y, and Z? And then they'll go back, "Oh, you're correct. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I was wrong." And I was like, "Yeah, but you presented that answer like you were right."
But the
Like
problem
there
with
was
it that people don't understand is like it is not a sentient being. It is a predictive analytical tool. And a predictive analytical tool that actually has a foundation that is shifting. And this is a little technical. Like databases in the past were very stable because they're just like this big Oracle database that's stable. It doesn't change that much. The whole basis of these large language models shifts like sand.
mm,
So these, when it goes to ask a question yesterday versus today, it doesn't give you the same answer.
mm,
It gives you different answers every day. Now, if you're looking for stability and repeatability, which a lot of businesses like, I need something stable and repeatable. How the heck do you have something stable and repeatable when the foundation shifts every freaking day?
yeah,
That's why it gives you a lot of crap.
mhm,
Excuse my French. It's like, and it's not reliable. Like, unless you put a lot of controls in, and then you actually have to take time. The problem is with AI, in order to use it correctly, you have to be a technician, you have to be an engineer, and you
mhm.
have to put a lot of controls in, like you're actually writing real code.
Gotcha,
Typical
gotcha.
person doesn't write it that way. They just
Yeah,
ask the natural language questions. They don't go do the case statements. They don't go do all the if then else's.
yeah, yeah,
They just ask it a generic, and it's going to give you bad stuff because you
yeah.
actually have to narrow it down with all the case statements and all this other stuff and give it a bunch of rules, which means that's not what a regular person is going to do.
Right, I mean, that's that's not the reason that we've accessed AI. I mean, I don't want it to make my life harder where I have to do more work. I just want to
Yeah,
do less work.
yeah. I mean,
And,
I can use it when I deal with stuff. If I build rules for it, it's great. It's a really good tool for an engineer.
um,
It can level me up. It can give me a lot of power, and I can use it, and I can control it. But it's being sold like this sentient like HAL 9000. That, but HAL 9000, what did it do? It didn't let
Yeah.
him back in the ship.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to piggyback on what you said was, at the end of the day, for trust and estates lawyers like me and wherever the other trust and estates lawyers are out there, what we're doing is we're a very small group in reality. And what we're doing is we're just learning from the mistakes of the past, right? When we get trust and we're administering those trust, and we realize that this trust from 1988 was missing these terms and that
Oh
terms, and
yeah,
the world
yeah.
has changed. We just all kind of talk to each other in our forums, and we say, hey, everybody, make sure you are aware that, this is this, and, Wells
The
Fargo is
law's like
going this way.
the law builds on precedent, right? And
Yeah.
like, every case that comes down the line evolves, and you evolve your understanding of like what is possible and what you can actually, you know, present, or
Yeah.
what kind of argument how can you make your case? Can you actually protect the client? Can you do that? Say it's based on like the jurisprudence of all the things that have happened.
Right.
And if you're up on all the latest cases, and you're up on all the things that have precedents that have been created, then it's like just like computer programming. We build on what was done in the past.
Mhm.
But it's done like every day. There's new stuff happening, so we have to exponentially learn all the time. So we
Mhm.
don't know what we don't know, but we know tomorrow we're probably going to learn something different, and we have to evolve the code. So
Right.
we constantly evolve the code like you guys evolve the law.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the
That's
same thing.
interesting.
It's the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of logic. I mean, you guys use logic the same way we use logic.
Right. Right. Right.
So like, it's interesting when people have to pick that the person who's going to be that successor trustee. Is that like the decisions that people make? Do they make the right decisions? Typically, it's
No,
like, do you end up seeing a lot of situations where people made an assumption on who that successor trustee, and they actually picked the wrong person?
they picked the wrong person probably 80% of the time. And it's because they don't really realize what they're doing. So, what you're doing when you're selecting your agents. So, let's just say you have for your trust, it's going to be your successor trustees. For your power of attorney, it's going to be your agent or your attorney in fact. For your healthcare directives, it's going to be your agent. They call it an agent. Well, these are all jobs, okay? I mean, we got to remember that. Like it's not like being knighted in England or something. This is a position that they're going to have to carry out duties. Number one, it's like Jack in the Box, right? I don't know when this is going to happen. Okay. I mean, I'm the trustee of my grandmother's trust. My grandmother is 102 years old.
Wow.
I kid you not. In the back of my mind, almost every week, I'm thinking, is today going to be the day that I
Yeah,
get
you
this
know.
phone call? And
Yeah.
now I'm going to have to
Do
do what I
this.
have to do. I mean,
Yeah.
amidst me grieving my 102-year-old grandmother, right? So it's like, and I'm a trust and estates attorney. You'd think that that'd be just in the bag. But I'm like, oh man, am I going to have to deal with this? So my point is that people get that wrong 90%, maybe 80, 90% of the time because they're choosing people based on these personal relationships. They're choosing people based on, oh, well, he loves me, or,
Yeah.
this is
But
my
can they
son or
actually
my
do the job?
daughter.
Yeah, because
But
it's
can they
like you
actually
said,
do
it's
the
a
job?
job. Yeah, that's a big problem because like if you just do it based on a relationship, like, or a feeling, or like whether it's like, is that person reliable? Like, is
Right,
Uncle Bobby the best guy to do that when Uncle Bobby's like not usually doesn't show up on time? It does half of the things he says he's gonna do. So if you need something to get done, is he gonna do it?
right,
Probably not.
right. So that's one of the issues you have. You also have an issue where that maybe that person is bad with money, and you have to understand, you can have a trust all you want, but when you go to, say, a bank to open up an account or to get some type of loan or whatnot, the trustee is going to have to use their personal credit. I mean, unless the trust has some type of collateral that they
Hmm.
can put up. But it's all types of things like that. For your healthcare agent, is that person local? Can they kind of drop what they're doing to be at the hospital and figure out what's going to happen with your care and stuff like that? All of that stuff
Yeah.
is very important.
You might have
Um,
to, like, it might be super important because healthcare is so complicated, right? And different plans have different things, right? So if you want to have a comprehensive plan, well, it's probably going to cost money, right?
right,
So if you have somebody running your healthcare and they go for the lowest cost option, well, you're going to get the lamest care ever.
right, right, right.
If you're
Especially
expecting
if
you're going to get, it's like, so they're running it, but what if they pick the worst like type of plan? The
yeah,
like the impossible where you have to pay everything up front. The indemnity plan
right,
where you got basically get zero coverage. It's just like unless there's a disaster, you're paying everything out of pocket. It's like if that trustee picks that, you're
right,
out of luck.
right. And maybe your healthcare directive appoints an agent that has no follow through or somebody that's not going to speak up for you and do things. You know, like for instance, we all know some of those people in our lives who are great people, but we already know they're going to get pushed over by anybody and
Push
everything.
over, yeah.
So do you want that person talking for you when you can't talk, or do you want your sister that's, maybe loud and obnoxious, but at least she gets it done?
But somebody that can negotiate like with your debt, right? You know, you got to pay it off, but whatever. But if you have somebody that just gets rolled over and always says yes right off without negotiating, then you're like, okay, well then you're not going to get the best benefit. Like the management of everything's probably going to get not as tight as it could be because
Hmm.
they're going to get rolled
Right,
every time.
right, right, right,
So you want somebody that's like, don't you want an advocate that's going to fight the way you think they should fight instead of somebody that says, oh, I don't want to go through the bother. Let's just pay it. Let's just do it. Like, I would just say yes.
yeah,
I say I'm
yeah,
just going to be a yes man. I say yes no matter what because I don't want any
right.
friction.
Right. So, and just real quick, just to end that topic for everybody, the one thing that benefits is this: either you get somebody who is very well suited for the job, a trustee who knows how to communicate, a trustee that's good with money, etc., a healthcare agent that knows the healthcare system, maybe your granddaughter's a nurse or whatever, right? Or you do the opposite and you get somebody who will hire the right people and
Yeah,
get the right
third
team
party.
in place.
Is that
Because
like a third party, like administrative type stuff?
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can certainly get like an attorney or some type of professional fiduciary, but I just mean even an heir. I recently, a couple years ago, really worked with a guy. He couldn't read or write,
Mm.
but he was the trustee, but he had me. So all I needed him to do was make the decisions. I kind of presented him with some
Oh, and he
decisions,
does say
then he
yes,
would
no.
just make them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what and his whole family, they were getting on him, but as soon as he got me, everything was rolling. And I
Yeah,
felt so
yes.
good about that because I was like, "No, you're qualified. You can make the decisions and you hire the right people."
You just gotta get their advice. It's like just because like that's a lot of times if you're in business, you get these executives like you get the guy that says he knows it all, or you get the guy that says I don't know. I'm gonna actually get the benefit of the people in the room that do know,
Yeah,
and then I'll make a decision after they
yeah.
propose all the options, and I'll let the architect decide how the foundational structure should be. I'm not gonna go in and say, well, I don't think we need that pillar. Right. No, I think I'll let the architect figure it out. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
go jump into something I don't know. Right.
exactly, exactly, exactly. Yep.
That's the basics. It's like I don't want to be putting 10 floors and not have enough support.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I do with my practice is as soon as I get contacted by a trustee or somebody that's the executor of a will or something like that, I tell them, "Hey, let's get a team together. Let's get a CPA in here. Let's get other people." And you'd be surprised it doesn't really increase the price that much, but we make sure that we get everything done properly
Yeah,
because you just never
you have
know
it
how
done
much
right.
money you're
Well, you know,
saving by getting the people in place.
yeah, because if you don't have somebody that really knows how to deal with the IRS, right? To deal with the liens, to deal with the whatever tax obligations or the debt obligations. And you get people who's like, well, let's go just take all that money and go buy a yacht.
Right.
Go buy that Ferrari. Let's go buy the
Yeah.
Bentley.
Right.
But like, maybe you should take care of that other stuff first.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But then did figure out how not to blow it. Like, get the guy who takes the lump sum of the lottery,
Oh, right.
and he's like, "Let me just take it all so I can go wild, go to Vegas." It's
Yeah.
like, no, I don't think you should do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
But I think it's just it's really good to have somebody who can like. I think a lot of times people move too fast, and I think what's good about like being a lawyer or being anybody that's like a technical person is they always kind of tell you like step back. Let's get like the 50,000 foot view, and then we'll
Mhm.
kind of zoom in and tell people to kind of like let's go through it, in a systematic way, and kind of unpack the onion, right?
Right. 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 And that's why I was kind of going into a little bit about the trust and about the articles and explaining that, every article means something different. So sometimes you have to really zero in on one article and say, hey, look, this particular article regarding digital assets, we need to make this robust because, like you said earlier, 80% of your money could be in digital assets. So if you just have some generic AI trust that said, yeah, trustee has access to digital assets, what does that mean?
Yeah, and the digital
But
assets is like what about like your Facebook account or your
right,
Twitter account, right?
right,
What if you don't have the password? Like, what if you don't have the admin rights for your YouTube channel,
right,
right? If you don't have the admin rights for your YouTube channel, and you don't have the access to your TikTok channel, or if you don't have the access to your digital rights management for all your masters, and to know like what your connection with like BMI or
right,
ASCAP, like and actually have all your registered numbers for your like your ISBN numbers or your
right,
copyright numbers for all your productions, and actually know what percentage, like if you collaborate with people, which is the big thing in the industry, you
mhm,
might have a royalty split where you're 60/40 or 80/20.
right,
You don't even know, like, where is that? Like, if you don't know where that list of like where are all your splits, and where's your record of when you get your royalty and how
right,
often
right.
you get it and
Yeah.
who's
And
accounting
does
for
your and what rights does your trustee have to access and to control that?
it.
Eh,
Yeah,
So that's all things that you have to know, especially for creatives. You have to know because you're over here signing all these contracts and your focus is on your work where it should be. But you just have to remember that what are you working for? And make sure that at least you have some type of planning in place that can jive with some of those documents because you, like we said earlier, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So what ends up happening is with contracts, and this is the one of the big things I hate about contracts, is contracts are written by lawyers for lawyers.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And contracts have what's called jargon.
yeah.
And we all know what jargon is. You're an engineer, you know what jargon is. Jargon is terms that you
I know.
apply a meaning to that I apply a different meaning to.
Yeah, you won't
So
know.
you say, "Hey, use your mouse and go here." I'm like, "Mouse, got it. Rodent." No, I mean your mouse.
Yeah,
Oh, that's jargon, right? So the problem I have is that we have so many contracts that are written with jargon that the people who are signing them don't really know what this word
yeah. It's so
means.
technical. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
because
in
it's
the
a
art.
legal word
It's
written
like
for
in the
me.
code. Yeah, it's like in the code. Like I have got like in the code base really technical stuff that I know, but that customer has no idea. Right. So if they get an error and it says like, module A347 had a bad compute error, it's like what they was like, I don't know what that is. Well, you're
And
not
I didn't
supposed
make
to.
an error.
No, but that's why you pay me. Can I go fix
Right,
it?
right,
Like, you
right.
don't know how to fix it. You'll call me at 2 in the morning to go fix it, right? And I'll get paid the money to do it, but you have no idea. It's like, yeah, we're transparent. We told you what it is, but you have no idea how to fix it.
Right. And that's the problem with contracts is they say, well, hold on. We didn't force you to sign this on the spot. You could have sought legal advice. As a matter of fact, we told you to seek legal advice and you didn't.
It's the same
So
thing.
that's the problem. And people don't realize that those contracts are written by lawyers for lawyers with legal jargon in them that we attach different terms than you attach to it. And that's the danger with contracts.
Yeah, and the AI is not going to level you up on that because like you still don't know what you're doing. Because like it might have told you somebody like it told you something wrong, so you're gonna go argue and think you know something when you don't.
Yeah. Right, 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 right.
That's the problem is everybody's thinking they like, oh, I got my pocket encyclopedia, and I know everything.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't. Right? I don't want you being a surgeon because you went and asked AI how to fix
Right.
my liver. I don't
Right.
think you want to do that operation
Right. Nope.
because I don't
Nope.
think you know what you're doing. It's like,
Yeah.
but I want to thank you for being here today and remind people we do have your QR code up. So people actually go to your website. What do they find there?
So at my website, they're going to find some resources that I have. I have some free resources. I have some paid resources, but resources just on estate planning and trust administration, probate, the whole process. I'm here in San Francisco, California. Practice California law, mainly only up here in the Bay Area. I stay pretty
Mhm.
local, but if you have any questions or anything, I have referrals throughout the state.
Well, that's awesome. I want to thank you again. There's a lot of probably like people that we've talked about in California that if they're looking, some of the artists that we've dealt with out there, they want to check you out. We do refer people that have been watching the show. So our California artist groups, they're looking for somebody to like help them level up on some stuff they don't know about on the estate plan, and hopefully they'll contact you. I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Man, I had a blast and I really appreciate it. And I just want to wish everybody success on their future ventures.
Thank you.